I still remember the sound of the glass shattering, right after my cousin's voice cut through the laughter. Ask Emily about her past before you marry her. The hall went silent. My engagement night, the night I was supposed to feel loved, seen, and chosen, turned into a storm of whispers and eyes that burned holes through me. I could hear my mother's sharp inhale, Daniel's hand slipping away from mine, and Sophie's satisfied smirk as she stood there in her silver gown, my cousin, my so-called sister. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to tell them it wasn't true, but the weight of humiliation pressed harder than words could carry. Everyone stared as if they'd been waiting for this moment, the moment Emily Parker's perfect image finally cracked. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes, it wears your own family's smile. That night, Sophie thought she ended me, but she didn't know I'd already begun recording the truth long before she exposed the lie. Because deep down, I knew, one day, she'd turn on me. People always said our family was the picture of unity. The Parkers and the Millers, two respected names bound by love, loyalty, and a shared obsession with reputation. From the outside, we looked flawless. Our family dinners were filled with polite laughter, matching silverware, and carefully chosen compliments. But inside, every smile hid competition, and every conversation felt like a quiet test of worth. My mother, Margaret, believed that respect was everything. Emily, she would always remind me, our family's image is our legacy. Never give anyone a reason to talk. I nodded every time, even though I knew she didn't need to say that to Sophie, my cousin, her favorite niece. Sophie had a way of shining that everyone noticed. She was bold, graceful, and effortlessly charming. The kind of girl who could make the elders laugh and the men listen. I used to think she was my best friend. We shared secrets, clothes, even dreams. But slowly, I realized that her kindness had conditions. She liked being the center, and if anyone got too close to her spotlight, she quietly pushed them back into the shadows. At family gatherings, Aunt Linda, Sophie's mother, would brag endlessly about her daughter's accomplishments. Sophie just got promoted again, she'd say, looking directly at my mother. She's always been such a responsible girl. My mother would force a smile, but her eyes would flick toward me, not with pride, but with quiet disappointment. I wasn't the rebel or the failure. I just wasn't enough. I studied hard, worked a simple office job, stayed polite, helped Grandma Eleanor with her medicine. But in our family, effort didn't shine unless it came with attention. Then Daniel came into the picture. He was kind, mature, the type every mother dreams her daughter will marry. When he proposed, my family treated it like a public achievement. Finally, my mother said, something people will talk about with pride. Even Sophie smiled and hugged me. You deserve this, she said sweetly, her perfume heavy and her voice almost rehearsed. But as the wedding plans began, I started noticing small cracks in our perfect world. Sophie volunteered to help me with the arrangements, but she made choices I never approved. She'd comment on my dress in front of others, that color doesn't flatter you, Em. She'd drop subtle remarks about my job, my choices, my silence. At first, I brushed it off. Families have jealous moments, I told myself. But something about her smile, that patient, knowing smile, began to scare me. One night after a dinner, I overheard my mother and Aunt Linda whispering in the kitchen. My name came up, and laughter followed. I didn't hear every word, but I caught enough. People will soon see who really deserves the spotlight, Aunt Linda said softly. And Sophie's voice followed, calm and certain. Oh, they will. That was the moment I knew something much darker was being planned behind my back. The problem began quietly, like most betrayals do. It wasn't a single argument or one cruel remark. It was the way small humiliations started to stack up, brick by brick, until I could no longer breathe beneath them. After my engagement announcement, Sophie became everywhere. She'd insert herself into every conversation, every plan, every moment that should have belonged to me. She told relatives which decor I should pick, corrected my decisions in front of others, and smiled sweetly whenever someone called us inseparable cousins. But behind that smile, her words sliced clean. One afternoon, while we were tasting cakes for the ceremony, she said, Daniel seems more patient than I expected. He doesn't mind your quietness. I laughed weakly, but her eyes told me she wasn't joking. At family dinners, she'd sit closer to him than I did, chatting about her job, her travels, her confidence, things she knew I couldn't compete with. My mother never noticed, or maybe she chose not to. Sophie just likes attention, she said once, waving it off. Don't make it bigger than it is.
But it was bigger.
It was the way Daniel started listening to her more, the way Aunt Linda began dropping comments like, Sophie is like the daughter Margaret always wanted. Each time they said it, my mother's silence hurt worse than the insult itself.
She didn't defend me.
She just stared at her tea, pretending not to hear.
Then came the whispers. Subtle, poisonous.
I overheard two of Daniel's cousins talking behind the staircase during a family barbecue. I heard Emily had issues before, one said. Something about leaving college.
Yeah, the other replied. Sophie mentioned she went through a breakdown or something.
Guess they kept it quiet. I froze. My secret, the one I had shared only with Sophie and my best friend, Olivia, had slipped out. 2 years ago, before I met Daniel, I dropped out of college after a panic attack that spiraled into depression. It wasn't something I was proud of, but it also wasn't something shameful. Still, I knew how our family viewed weakness. Mental health wasn't real to them. It was an embarrassment to be buried. That night, I called Sophie.
Why would you tell anyone about that? I demanded.
Her tone was soft, almost innocent. Oh, Emily, I didn't mean to.
It just slipped.
You know how families talk.
But she did mean to.
I heard it in her voice, that tiny flicker of satisfaction she couldn't hide. After that, things spiraled quickly.
Daniel grew distant.
He started questioning little things, my work, my health, my reliability. You should have told me, he said one night. Secrets don't build strong marriages. I wanted to cry, to tell him I wasn't hiding anything, that I just didn't want to be judged for something I'd survived. But every word felt useless, because Sophie had already rewritten the story for me. The final blow came during a family brunch at Grandma Eleanor's house. Sophie was scrolling through her phone when she suddenly gasped and said, "Oh no, someone just sent me something strange." She showed a group chat full of relatives, screenshots of a fake email from my old university, claiming I was expelled for misconduct.
Everyone stared at me. Even Grandma looked uncertain.
That's ridiculous.
I shouted.
I never. Sophie tilted her head, voice calm.
I'm sure it's fake, Em.
But you can't blame people for wondering.
Her words were sugar-coated poison.
I felt my chest tighten, the air thick, the room shrinking.
That was the day I stopped crying. I realized tears wouldn't save me anymore.
Something darker had begun, a war I never wanted but could no longer avoid. And that night, as I sat alone in my room, replaying every humiliation, one truth burned inside me. If Sophie wanted to ruin me, she'd have to face the truth I'd kept for her too. After that brunch, I stopped expecting kindness. What followed wasn't just neglect, it was slow, deliberate cruelty disguised as family honesty. Every gathering became a stage, and I was the silent actress trapped in their twisted play. Sophie's whispers no longer hid behind doors. She'd say things aloud now, soft enough to sound casual, loud enough for others to hear. Poor Emily, she'd sigh at dinners, she's been through so much. I just hope she's strong enough for marriage. Every time she said those words, people's eyes turned toward me, some with pity, others with doubt. My mother stayed quiet, her lips pressed into that thin, familiar line of fear and embarrassment.
During wedding shopping, the saleswoman asked who the bride was.
Sophie smiled first. She is, she said, pointing at me. But I'm helping her, she's always been nervous with choices. The woman nodded politely, but I felt the sting in my throat. I wanted to speak up, but I couldn't. Every time I tried, Sophie found a way to make me sound ungrateful or defensive. The worst moment came during Daniel's family dinner, the first time both families met.
It was supposed to be a proud evening.
I had spent days preparing my outfit, rehearsing polite answers, and convincing myself that maybe, just maybe, things would go smoothly.
But Sophie arrived early.
She greeted Daniel's parents with hugs, laughter, and stories about me. You know, Emily's always been the quiet one, she said with a smile. She keeps things bottled up, poor thing.
Once, she disappeared for weeks in college.
We were all so worried. Daniel's mother looked startled.
My heart dropped.
I could see the questions forming in her eyes, the one Sophie wanted her to ask. I excused myself to the kitchen, pretending to check on something. My hands shook so badly that the serving tray nearly slipped. My mother followed me in, whispering harshly, "Control yourself, Emily. People are watching." "Mom," I said, my voice trembling. Sophie's turning everyone against me. She sighed, eyes darting to the door. Don't make a scene. She's family. That sentence broke something in me. She's family. As if blood excused cruelty, as if betrayal could be forgiven because it shared a last name. From that night onward, something in me hardened. I stopped smiling. I stopped explaining myself. Instead, I started observing, quietly, carefully. I noticed how Sophie's stories changed depending on who was listening. She played victim to some, hero to others. I saw how she saved screenshots, how she used her phone like a weapon. Olivia, my only friend in that chaos, tried to help. You can't let her win, Em, she said. Record everything. Don't trust her again. So I did. I began saving messages, recording conversations, collecting proof, not for revenge, but for survival. But even as I tried to stay composed, Sophie kept pushing. She began questioning my relationship in front of others. Daniel, she'd laugh, you're so patient. I don't know how you handle her moods. Everyone laughed with her. Even Daniel smiled awkwardly, not realizing each laugh was a knife to my chest. By then, rumors had spread beyond family, to friends, to neighbors, even to Daniel's workplace. Someone had sent those fake screenshots to him again, this time through an anonymous email. When he confronted me, his voice was sharp, filled with doubt. Why do these things keep coming up, Emily? Someone's clearly hiding something. I wanted to scream that it was Sophie, but the words caught in my throat. Without proof, I'd only look desperate. That night, I stood by my bedroom window, staring at the reflection of my engagement ring. It used to feel like hope. Now, it looked like a chain. I whispered to myself, she's not just trying to humiliate me, she's trying to replace me. And as that realization settled deep inside me, I picked up my phone and pressed record for the first time. Because the next time she tried to destroy me, I'd be ready. It happened on the night that was supposed to seal my happiness forever. My engagement party, the one I had dreamed about since childhood, turned into a theater of humiliation I could never have imagined. The hall shimmered in gold light and laughter. Guests poured in dressed in silk and pride, while music floated through the air like a promise. My mother stood near the entrance, greeting everyone with that rehearsed smile she wore at every event. Daniel's family was already there, his mother holding a bouquet that matched my gown. Everything looked perfect, until Sophie arrived. She walked in late, wearing a silver gown that glittered brighter than mine. Her eyes met mine across the room, and I swear, there was triumph hiding behind her sweet grin. She hugged me tightly, whispered, "You look beautiful tonight," and stepped away before I could reply. For a while, the night went smoothly. Speeches, laughter, flashes from cameras. It almost felt like my life had finally calmed down. Then Daniel's mother stood up to make a toast. "To Emily and Daniel," she said warmly, "may your marriage be built on trust, honesty, and respect." It was that word, honesty, that made Sophie smile. She raised her glass and said softly, "Speaking of honesty, shouldn't we all be truthful tonight?" The room grew still. All eyes turned toward her. Even the music stopped. "Sophie," my mother warned in a low voice, but Sophie ignored her. She turned to Daniel. "Before you take this next step, you should probably know what your fiancé has been hiding." She pulled an envelope from her purse, white, clean, and cold-looking under the lights. She handed it to Daniel with an innocent tilt of her head. "You might want to read this." Daniel hesitated, glancing between us. I felt my body go rigid as he slid out a few printed papers, screenshots, photos, documents. My name was there, stamped across a letter from a university stating I'd been expelled for misconduct. Fake. Every word of it. But in that moment, logic meant nothing. The murmurs began. Gasps. Whispers. People moving away slightly, as if I'd turned contagious. Daniel's eyes darkened. "Is this true?" "No," I said quickly, my voice trembling. "It's not real. Sophie." Sophie interrupted gently. Don't make this wise. Maybe it's time you just tell the truth." My mother grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Emily, what is this? I didn't do anything wrong." I cried, my throat burning. "She's lying." But the more I tried to defend myself, the guiltier I looked. Daniel's family stood, exchanging awkward glances. Aunt Linda put a hand over her mouth in fake shock, while Sophie lowered her head like a grieving saint. I wanted to scream, to tear the papers apart and show everyone the truth. But the truth didn't matter anymore, the scene did. And Sophie had already won that scene. Then came the moment that broke me. Daniel set the papers down slowly and said, his voice cold, "Maybe we should talk later. In private." It felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet. The music started again, softer now, distant. People avoided my gaze. I could feel eyes burning into my back as if I were on trial. My mother whispered harshly, "You've embarrassed us, Emily." Those words hurt more than anything Sophie could have said. My own mother, the woman who raised me to guard our family's name, believed her niece over her daughter. I left the hall before anyone could stop me. The night air hit my face, cold and sharp. My hands trembled as I ripped off the ring Daniel had given me. It fell onto the pavement with a hollow sound. I sat in my car for hours, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed, messages, missed calls, family group chats exploding with sympathy for Sophie. Screenshots of the expulsion letter were already spreading. Someone had even captioned it, "Even perfect girls have secrets." That's how fast a reputation dies. One whisper, one lie, one family gathering. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. I just stared at the ceiling, feeling my heart turn to stone. By morning, the whispers had turned into silence. My mother didn't speak to me. Daniel didn't call. And Sophie? She sent a single message. "Sophie, you should have told him, Emily. Secrets always surface." That was the moment something inside me broke, not from pain, but from realization. All this time, I had tried to protect peace, to protect family reputation, to believe that goodness would somehow win. But kindness had only made me a target. I looked at Sophie's message again, and for the first time, I didn't delete it. I saved it, like I had saved the voice recordings, the screenshots, the proof she thought I didn't have. Because the truth was, the secret she exposed wasn't mine alone. It was hers. And as dawn light spilled across my room, I whispered to myself, calm and certain, "You took my dignity in front of everyone, Sophie. Now, I'll take your truth." That was the night I stopped being the victim. That was the night I started planning justice. After the night my engagement was torn from me, I stopped looking for comfort in other people. Grief had been a weight. Anger became a tool. I let myself feel cold, measured, precise. The panic and helplessness that used to swallow me were no longer welcome guests. I had work to do. Quiet, careful work that would not let emotion ruin the details. First, I rebuilt my fortress, evidence. I went back through months of old messages, saved voice notes, and hidden recordings I'd made when Sophie's tone shifted just enough to be dangerous. Olivia sat with me for hours as we catalogued everything, timestamps, contexts, the names of relatives who'd been manipulated into repeating Sophie's lies. "We need a map," Olivia said. "Not emotions. A map." So we made one, a timeline of lies, who told whom, and how the fake documents had traveled. Next, I turned to optics. Truth needs witnesses. I contacted a former classmate who could verify my story about college, the real reason I left, and the professor who had supported me. I asked a retired journalist friend of Olivia's to advise on releasing recorded material legally and forcefully, so it wouldn't be dismissed as vindictive. He taught me about chain of custody, how to present audio without editing that could be questioned. I learned how to make proof bulletproof. But evidence alone wasn't enough. Sophie thrived on the stage. Her performances convinced people before facts did. I needed to remove the stage from her hands. So I planned a gathering where the script would flip, a family meeting called by Grandma under the pretense of settling matters, with Daniel present, and with the right people given copies of everything before anyone spoke. I would let them read, watch, and listen in silence. Let truth land slowly, like a verdict. There were risks. If I leaked recordings publicly without the family context, I could be painted as vindictive. If I waited too long, Sophie might fabricate something else. If people dismissed me again, the plan would collapse into another humiliation. Each night, doubt crept in. The safer path was silence. The braver, more dangerous path was exposure. I chose the latter because silence had already cost me everything. Emotionally, I trained myself to stay unreadable. When my mother called to ask if I was calmer, I answered, "I'm focused." Daniel's last apology came through with trembling loopholes. I kept it for the record. I saved Sophie's message, every casual cruelty, like a ledger of the debt she owed. On the practical side, I organized everything into 3 parts: the documents, the witness statements, and the recordings. Olivia would distribute the documents to family members as they arrived. The journalist friend would be there, not to sensationalize, but to clarify legal authenticity if anyone challenged the sources. Daniel would be told privately to arrive early. Grandma, who still believed in fairness, agreed to call the meeting, unaware of the full scope, but ready to restore dignity. I felt a strange calm while assembling the pieces. It wasn't glee, it was justice being prepared like a careful recipe. The timeline, the files, the faces, all of it fit together with a precision I hadn't felt since before everything fell apart. Still, my hands shook the morning I packed my phone and the flash drive. The risk tasted like iron in my mouth. Would they believe me when the curtain lifted? Would Sophie crumble or double down? Could I live with the fallout no matter the outcome? Olivia squeezed my hand and whispered, "You ready?" I exhaled, feeling the cold certainty settle in my chest. I stepped into the car, the drive to Grandma's house short and loud with my thoughts. My finger hovered over the group chat I had created, names of every relative waiting for the truth, and I thought of all the nights I had been quiet to keep peace. I pressed my thumb to the screen, and for a moment I almost backed out. Then I steadied my breath and hit send. The living room at Grandma's house had never felt so heavy. Every seat was filled. Cousins, aunts, uncles, my parents, even Daniel, sitting nervously at the far end near Sophie. She looked perfect as always, a crisp white dress, hair tied neatly, her lips painted in that confident shade of red she wore whenever she wanted to appear untouchable. But today, her eyes flickered just a little too often toward me. She could sense something was coming. Grandma sat in the center, her frail hands resting on her cane. "We're here to clear misunderstandings," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This family has been torn apart by whispers, and I won't let it continue." I nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. My palms were damp, my heart pounding hard enough to echo in my ears. For a moment, I almost forgot how to start. Then Olivia gave me a small nod from the corner, her phone ready. "Thank you, Grandma," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You've always believed in fairness." "That's all I've ever wanted to." I turned toward the rest. "But fairness requires truth, and truth has been missing for a long time." Sophie shifted in her seat. "Are we really doing this again?" she muttered with a fake smile. "You already caused enough drama." I cut her off. "I'm not here for drama. I'm here for proof." A murmur rippled through the room. I connected my phone to the television, and the first audio clip began to play. It was Sophie's voice, calm, venomous, and unmistakable. "He doesn't belong here, Daniel. He's only after the inheritance. I can fix that, don't worry." The room froze. Daniel's head dropped instantly, his face pale. My mother covered her mouth. My father looked from Sophie to me in disbelief. Sophie laughed nervously. "That's taken out of context." "Really?" I said quietly, cueing the next recording. This one was worse, Sophie bragging to a friend about how she'd altered documents to make me look financially irresponsible. The words poured out like poison made of silk. "It's easy. Just a few changed dates, a deleted signature, he'll never see a penny. Mom believes everything I say anyway." Gasps filled the air. My mother stood. "Sophie, tell me this isn't true." Sophie's voice cracked. "Someone must have edited that." His trying to ruin me." I looked at her directly, my voice low but unwavering. "You already did that yourself." Olivia stepped forward, handing printed copies of the original and altered documents to everyone. My journalist friend confirmed the authenticity. No one spoke for a long, unbearable minute. Then Daniel broke the silence, his voice hoarse. "Sophie, you said he was manipulative. You told me he lied about everything." She turned to him, desperation breaking through her polished surface. "Daniel, you have to believe me, he's doing this for revenge." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No. You did this for greed." Her composure finally cracked. "I did it for us. You don't understand. Your family never respected me. They always compared me to him." Tears fell down her face, but they didn't feel real. They felt like the same tears she had used to buy sympathy all these years. My father spoke next, his voice trembling with shame. "I believed every word you said about him. I turned my own son into a stranger." He looked at me, eyes wet. "I'm sorry." That broke something inside me, not in pain, but in release. For the first time, I saw regret on their faces, not pity.
Sophie rose suddenly, shouting, "You'll all regret this. You think you can destroy me with a few recordings? You'll see." But Grandma's cane struck the floor sharply. The sound silenced the room.
"Enough," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in years. "Truth doesn't destroy people, Sophie. Lies do.
And you've destroyed enough."
Sophie looked around, realizing there was no one left to defend her. She turned toward Daniel, pleading, but he stood and walked away.
The click of the door closing behind him was the final judgment. I stood in silence as Grandma slowly turned to me.
"You carried this pain alone," she said softly. "But today, you returned our family's honor." I couldn't speak. My throat was tight with emotion. For years, I had dreamed of justice. Now that it stood before me, it felt both powerful and painfully quiet. Sophie collapsed back into her chair, shaking, her perfect mask shattered.
My father placed a trembling hand on my shoulder.
"You were right all along." I looked at him and whispered, "I never wanted to be right. I just wanted to be seen."
The room stayed silent, filled with the weight of exposed truth.
The lies had finally fallen, piece by piece, leaving nothing but the raw sound of honesty echoing through the house. And in that silence, that perfect, trembling silence, justice finally breathed. The days after that night felt strangely quiet, like the world had finally exhaled after holding its breath for too long. The tension that had once poisoned every family gathering was gone, replaced by a silence that felt both peaceful and hollow. I could still hear Sophie's voice echoing in my head, her desperate denials turning into choked sobs as everyone walked away from her lies. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with anger in my chest. There was no more need to prove myself, no urge to fight for a place that had never been mine to begin with. Justice had come, but it wasn't loud or triumphant. It was quiet, like the stillness after a storm, when you finally realize that survival itself is victory. My mother came to visit me a few days later.
She didn't say much.
She just held my hand and whispered, "I should have believed you."
Her voice cracked on those words.
I could see the guilt written all over her face, a weight I no longer wished to add to. "It's all right," I said softly. "The truth found its way.
That's all that matters."
Daniel, too, reached out after the chaos. His message was short, just 6 words. "I was wrong. You deserved better." And maybe that was enough. As for Sophie, she disappeared from the family for a while. Her engagement was broken, her reputation in shambles. I didn't feel joy in her downfall, only a sad sense of balance. She had built her world on lies, and when the truth finally rose, it did what truth always does. It burned everything false to ash. One evening, I stood outside the old house, watching the lights flicker in the windows. That home had once felt like a battlefield to me, every meal, every conversation, a test of worth. Now it looked smaller somehow, as if the illusion of perfection had finally cracked and revealed the truth beneath. Grandma called me inside for tea. She poured it slowly, her wrinkled hands steady. "You've changed," she said with a small smile. "You look lighter." I smiled back. "Because I finally stopped carrying other people's lies." She nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes," she said, "we mistake silence for peace, but real peace only comes after the truth has spoken." That night, as I walked back to my car, I looked up at the sky, calm, cloudless, and vast. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to earn respect from people who didn't value honesty, and how much freedom there was in letting go of their approval. "Respect isn't something you beg for," I whispered to myself. "It's something you build when no one's watching." That became my truth, my quiet lesson from all the noise. I left the house that night with nothing material to my name, no inheritance, no grand reconciliation, but I carried something far more powerful, my dignity. And that, I realized, was the one thing no one could ever take away again. As I drove away, the streetlights blurred in my rearview mirror, like fading ghosts of the past. Behind me lay betrayal, manipulation, and pain. Ahead of me, peace, clarity, and a future that belonged entirely to me. The storm was over. And in the silence that followed, I finally heard the sound of my own heart, steady, free, and proud. Memorable dialogue line. "They took everything they could, except my truth."